Hey guys, Bill here again. Just wanted to give a little preface before this episode of Geek Addicts. This is another one of the lost pilot episodes that we had initially done before we had officially, before we had actually started and finalized what Geek Addicts was going to be. This was recorded back in 2022, pretty early on. Similar to the previous two episodes, audio is a little rough. It was a very rough recording, kind of just to test things out, and weren't sure what we were going to do with it first. This one is on our favorite books, so we're talking, it basically is part of the same conversation, just talking books this time. So forewarning, a little rough audio, couldn't do anything about that, mostly just wanted to share this with everybody. Anyways, guys, on with the episode. The following is a GNC podcast production. Welcome to Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast.
Alright, so this one's a little bit more my realm of expertise for the most part, is books, because I'm constantly reading, and Bill can attest to that, because we work together, and I pretty much spend all my break time reading, so.
I used to read a lot, but then I had kids.
It's kind of hard now.
Well, yeah.
Because we've both been demoted to the inspection room.
Oh, I'm in shipping now.
Yeah, for now. Who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but...
well, I mean, at least yesterday they had a bunch of work, so, I mean, hopefully that'll last a while. But.
I hope so. It's scary, but anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not get depressing, guys. Jesus.
Well, we didn't say nothing about it. We just said we were in different departments.
Oh, it makes me depressed. Oh, I thought you were talking about the whole...
And to be fair, Cindy, if I didn't have that time on my breaks at work, I wouldn't be reading as much either. It's just I have that hour a day where I can read. So
I just miss it.
That's
but
what I do.
Sleep. I used to read at night a lot, but now sleep is so valuable.
Yeah, no kidding. At least we got lucky because Frankie really doesn't.
Yeah,
she sleeps through the night good for the most part.
But it's also just I don't have to wake up early and I don't do mornings.
For a 4-month-old, and she's started sleeping through the night like that at about 2 months.
Well, it's funny because reading is interesting to me because back in the day when you had all the time in the world to read, you never wanted to. Well, I mean, you probably did.
I did. I was always reading.
See,
I did not make friends very well.
Yeah, me either.
I didn't either, but I also was... It's because I was the video game guy, but...
I also got grounded a lot, so reading was one of the few activities I was allowed to do.
See, my problem was I could never get... I didn't discover books that I actually enjoyed, because I'm one of the few people who couldn't get into Harry Potter.
Fucking what?
Not because I didn't like it, it didn't appeal to me.
That's fair. I mean, we've had this conversation before. You're more of a sci-fi guy rather than fantasy.
Sci-fi, fantasy kind of... it depends on the medium. To me, I have a hard time... My problem is I have a hard time visualizing the words.
That's fair.
See, I'm very good at...
I remember we had a conversation once, because you said you either never watched or never particularly enjoyed The Lord of the Rings.
That's just never been my thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the apex of fantasy.
See, it's not even that. I'm not a big fan of Western style fantasy. I like Eastern fantasy. That's fair. Like Japan. That's and stuff. Fair. I kind of... It's all a taste thing, really. Because it was just kind of that thing. I have a hard time visualizing. So my problem is my attention is very hard to keep on something unless I'm very engaged with it.
That's fair.
And reading's always been tough. There are
you'd have a hard time reading Lord of the Rings too then, because he's very descriptive. Actually, I think it was I heard this once on the Rooster Teeth podcast, because Gus, who's one of the main guys there, has been there since the beginning, was talking about how he was going through Lord of the Rings again, and the way he described it, and I'm not sure if he was quoting somebody else or not, but he said something like, Tolkien's the kind of guy who will write a full chapter describing a loaf of bread and about a paragraph describing an epic battle. So.
See, I felt like something was said like that about Stephen King once, too.
Yeah, but Tolkien's way worse. I mean, Stephen King is very descriptive with his words, but
I love it.
Stephen King's also just he before his accident where he got whatever is going on there.
Well, I've been on this quest for a couple of years now to read all of Stephen King's book in the order of publication because of the way they all tie together and how the kinds of ways that he'll reference his other works and stuff. And I wanted to catch those kinds of references.
When we were trying to pick the books for this, I had a brain fart and forgot Stephen King because he's actually one of the few people I can read.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not on my top 3. But that's because these particular 3 that I picked have been with me since I was a kid. I didn't start reading Stephen King until I was an adult. But I do read a lot of Stephen King, and at this point, I'm at about the late 90s as to where his books were going in order of publication. I'm about the late 90s. The last one I read was Dark Tower 4, which Dark Tower series is really, really good. Mm-hmm. That one,
I love The Stand. That's my favorite.
The Stand is great. Actually, the Dark Tower ties in with The Stand very heavily. Because Randall Flagg is a big part of it. But you might like the Dark Tower. I don't know.
I'll have to get into it.
I don't know what you mean, because I know you say Western as in like Western.
So when I say
Western real life, not like spaghetti Western.
No, not. I think more like America, Europe. Because when I say Western, I think that. Because when I say Eastern, I'm
English speaking world.
Yes, I think like Japan,
which might sound conceited or however you want to say that.
Well,
self-absorbed. I don't know.
See, I say the reason I say it that way is because I'm a video game guy and I think like JRPG, Western RPG.
That's fair.
Because technically, I don't really use Eastern. I usually just say like J, because JRPG then Western RPGs.
Yeah, that's true. But the Dark Tower, the way Stephen King, in his forewords or whatever for his books, his ones for Dark Tower, he was talking about how he wanted to write a big long epic similar to Lord of the Rings, because he was wicked into Lord of the Rings when he was younger. He wanted to write a story like that, but he decided that particular style wasn't really him.
Yeah.
So he wanted to try and figure out what it is he wanted to do with his fantasy series, and then he saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in theaters. And then he decided he wanted a fantasy-type story like Lord of the Rings, set in a spaghetti western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And that's kind of what the series is like, the world that they live in. The world that it takes place is very much like the style of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but with a lot of fantasy elements to it.
Yeah.
The main character's a gunslinger. I mean,
yeah.
And they're kind of the peacekeepers. It honestly, I'd have to give a lot away to describe what it's about.
I get you there.
It plays a lot with alternate worlds and stuff like that too. And the Dark Tower is basically the nexus of all of Stephen King's works. They all tie together with the Dark Tower in some way, shape, or form. So
see, I swear most of my bias towards reading comes from school summer reading. I'm not sure if that's a world thing or just a American thing, but
I think it depends.
I always had that bias because schools would give you the summer reading they had to read, and my problem with summer reading isn't so much the whole you have to read a book during the summer. It was that the selection that they required you to pick was
you should
always...
be able to pick your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as long as you're reading, that's the important thing.
Because they'd always give you this selection. Well, it's because they want to have a standardized test and shit.
Yeah.
Which sucks because the book selections always suck.
I got lucky one year with the summer reading because I didn't do summer reading at all that year.
Oh, I never did.
But when I looked at the list of books, one of the books that was on the summer reading, like the options you had to pick from, was Harry Potter 7. Which I literally went to the overnight book release at Borders for. That's how much I wanted to read it. So
Borders, that's a name that we haven't heard in a long time.
Dude, do you have any idea how much time I spent at Borders?
I spent a lot of time there too, but I was usually looking at the comics.
I did that too, but just in general, I loved going to Borders.
It's funny, down in Connecticut.
When I was in middle school, I used to get my Naruto mangas from there.
Yeah, well, we're in New England, so up here we don't really, in Massachusetts anyways, you don't really have bookstores really aren't a thing around here anymore.
No, you got to drive a ways if you want to find a Barnes and Nobles or something.
Well, it's funny, Connecticut, they're everywhere.
Really?
There's 3 of them near Alex. We go to them every time I visit.
No kidding.
It's just not the same because it's at Borders. I used to go there and sit down in my little
coffee
corner.
at the little cafe.
I love the
in
chairs.
the private. Because remember there was private ones in the middle of the aisles and stuff, a secret library, and
Kitten.
you could read in private and
Kitten, dude, that's
have
not.
a coffee and
why are you walking there?
fuck the kitten, and and then I don't know, I miss that. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I actually, do you remember when we went to P-Town to go visit Chester?
Yeah.
And we found that bookstore. It was an old style house.
I love just independent bookstores. They don't exist
anymore.
Oh,
this
yeah,
was
it was
amazing.
this little hidden.
You walk down
place.
this little path that had a little wooden bridge type thing, and there's a house, a little tiny cottage looking house set back And you walk in and it smells like old book, you know. That
Every
smell.
wall was lined with
Every
bookshelves.
single
And
wall,
they were
every
all
hallway,
old books.
everything just stacked. There were piles, but it was amazing.
It was great.
See, I
Loved
love
it.
buildings like that, but
Wish we'd
I'm
gotten
also
more there.
always terrified of being in a place like that, just because one thing happens and that place is going up in a second.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, see, I'm terrified because all I can think of is oh my god, what is that movie?
Page Master?
Page Master, that's the one.
I haven't seen that in years.
We
I always
watched
think of
it a
that.
couple years ago, I think.
Yeah, I love that movie.
That was when I realized that, like, a bunch of actors that I know were in it. Like,
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart, Leonard Nimoy,
Isn't Whoopi Goldberg?
Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah, she was one of the books.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart was another one of them. I don't remember who was the last one. It wasn't Leonard Nimoy, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I think so. I can't remember.
It was good. And what's his face? The librarian
The
was
doc. Doc.
yeah, Dr. Brown. What the fuck's his name?
No.
Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher
Lloyd.
That's the one.
More cowbell.
Yeah. So anyways,
No, that's
Oh no,
Christopher
that's
Walken.
Christopher Walken, right? Christopher
Yeah.
Lloyd. There's too many names.
a lot of Christophers out there. So Cindy,
Hi.
what are your top 3 books?
Harry Potter
Of course.
series. Inkheart. Mostly Inkheart.
I read that, especially that first book. I read a lot when I was a
million
kid.
times, yeah. Like that book, just I'll never forget the first time I read it. It was like I was in that world, like it just the way that it brought you in, and
I love
it was
the
like
concept.
at the time in my life, like that was my dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Was like books coming up, being in that world, like it was amazing.
Have you ever? Do you know anything about that series?
Nah.
No, basically the story is about this little girl. Well, it's about her and her father, and they have this power where if they read out loud from a book, they will like essentially open the door to the world of that book,
Okay.
and things can be put into the book or taken out of the book. Like generally, it'll be like a swap.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the whole story starts is when she was really little, he was reading out loud to her and his wife.
Okay.
And his wife and their 2 cats got sucked into the book, and 2 villains and one, I guess you would call him an anti-hero, got thrown out. And that kind of sets the whole series of events
Okay.
going forward.
It sounds.
And then like
familiar.
later they go into the book and stuff. It's like
It sounds familiar. I just.
What's his?
It was a
face in the
movie with Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser. He did.
He played the dad.
and he read it. In the,
He read the second book in the audiobook
Yeah.
version.
But anyways,
Which he did a really good job with that. If anybody
What
likes
year
that series
what year
and
was
hasn't
that one
listened to it.
around?
The book or the movie?
The book.
oh god,
I have no idea.
Was it
when
like a
came out.
2000s or was it 90s?
I think it came out in the 90s.
90s,
I'm not 100%. It was where did it was Italian, wasn't it?
I have no idea. I just
The
remember.
woman who wrote it, I believe, was from Italy.
When did I get it? I don't remember.
Because
when
it takes
I got
place
it.
in like the Italy area, I believe.
Yeah, it seems like it. Maybe it started there. Her name was Cornelia.
Cornelia Funk or Funke.
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 I don't know.
Something like that. And Harry Potter speaks for itself.
Well, yes,
I mean, Harry
that
Potter
was
is just
my-
one of those.
I'm one of the rare people who didn't get into it, but I read the second book. I don't know why I read the second.
Chamber of Secrets is one of my favorites, both the book and the movie.
See,
it's
actually,
up
no, I
there
think
for
that
me.
was one of those like school assignments where I gave in and read the book because for some reason we got Harry Potter 2. And I just remember I actually read it. I was like, it wasn't bad, but I had like no desire to read another
Well, see, my aunt across the street, she had never really gotten into Harry Potter. Like, I think she has a couple of the books,
See,
like the early ones that she might
one.
have
It's
read.
kind
but-
of cringe now, but my whole reasoning was it was too popular for me at the time, so I was like, I'm gonna be the edgy,
The hipster.
Oh, you
the
wanna-
edgy.
The
I
hipster
hate
kid.
everything.
See, my thing was that like it started when I was very little, and I was reading really early. So like, I read through and grew up with those books. Like,
I watched the first 2 movies and then I got into the book.
See,
I was already reading them because by the time Prisoner of Azkaban had come out, I had already read the book. So I know that I had seen the first 2 movies, and then after that, I read up to whatever point they were at.
Yeah, because I was like, when everyone was talking about Harry Potter, I was the guy that was like, I'm playing Final Fantasy.
Yeah, which I just played 7 for the first time. What? It's Christmas, and it's March now, so like 3 months ago. And I just beat it maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
oh, so my third book would be Eye of the Dragon. Speaking of Stephen
Yeah,
King.
on the
Eye of the
Stephen
Dragon.
King.
Yeah.
Which, again, also very heavily ties into the Dark Tower. Actually, the book you said, The Stand, and the book you said, Eyes of the Dragon, both have the same villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ironically enough.
I always remember watching the Stand miniseries, too.
We watched that one recently.
We have
it on VHS, actually.
What's weird about Eye of the Dragon is, like, all my life, I have always had this, like, fantasy story that, like, I've known in my head. Like, some things will remind me of it, but I can't figure out where it's from. And I decided to read Eye of the Dragon 2 years ago.
Yeah, because your aunt had given me that book for Christmas. It was original, like, first print.
First print, yeah. And I read it, and I realized that, like, that was the story that I've had in my head my whole life. I've always known the story, so I asked my mom about it. And they used to read it to me when I was, like, a little kid and a baby. And, like, I've just always known it in my head.
They definitely cut certain parts out when they were reading it to you.
Oh, absolutely, because there's a few parts that
there's this whole part where the king who ends up dying partway through the book is, like, trying to convince his virgin wife to have sex with him. And he's, like, he's, like, describing it. He's using this, like, weird metaphor about, like, putting his horse in the stable or something, like something like that.
It's amazing how many books go into that territory. Casually.
It's weird.
But, like, I think my mom used to just tell me, like, this story, like, as, like, a bedtime story or something, because it's so profound in my memory and in my, like, imagination, like, which is why books were always my thing, because my imagination. It's why I suffer from paranoia, because my imagination is so vivid.
It's probably why all of your picks are fantasy books.
Exactly.
Fantasy, magic, that kind of thing.
Well, and I grew up with my parents doing Dungeons and Dragons with their friends and family on the weekends. And
smoking a bunch of pot, playing Dungeons and Dragons and rock music.
And drinking rock music, so, like, or fantasy is definitely
Cypress
in
Hill
my...
or something.
Yeah, I had a weird...
Which I don't think is... I still don't think I've heard your dad say
Cypress
Hill.
I don't think the audience is ready for my upbringing yet.
We'll get there. That's a future segment.
Yeah. It's a fun one. It's a fun one.
Good old books.
Oh, yeah. All right, so those are your three.
You want to do mine real quick?
Yeah, you can do yours.
Okay.
I honestly, if I'm looking at yours, I know what Scott Pilgrim is. Sorry to kind of blow up your bubble there. Yeah. But the other ones, I don't really think I know.
Well, Scott Pilgrim's a bit of a cheat because it's actually a visual novel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, comic books count, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they count. I keep a tally. I have been keeping a tally for the past few years of how many books I've read for the year because I'm trying to keep my brain moving no matter how much life comes around.
Question.
What?
Is Scott Pilgrim like Scott Pilgrim like the movie?
Like the movie, yeah.
Yeah, it's based off of...
It was a comic book
I didn't
original.
know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's based off a series of visual novels.
That makes a lot of sense as to why it is the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's basically the whole story about it's like a world it takes place in Canada, and the whole gag is that it's like a world based if like the world was like based off of video game logic, because it's like
that makes sense.
At random points, just like it's basically about the character Scott, who he's
a tool.
Yeah, kind of. He starts off, he's dating this one girl, and then he meets the girl of his dreams. So he dumps the girl he's going out with, but then he finds out that this girl has like 7 evil ex-boyfriends, and their whole goal is basically they're all going to fight him.
Yeah.
To earn the right to date her.
If they were to break up in the story, would he become the 8th evil?
So that's actually a plot point later.
Is it? That's amazing.
Because they do break up at one point.
You don't own these comics, do you?
Yeah, I actually have 2. I'll let you borrow the black and white novel, the black and whites, because they had the black and white originals, and then there's they did a color.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I'm actually really interested to see what the comic was like.
Yeah,
I'll dig
I'd
them
read that.
next time I'm over. I'll bring them.
Yeah, which reminds me, we still need to read those next gen comics. I've read some of them, but I haven't read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta let him finish.
But there's when I say it's based off video game logic, there's like random like video game just references, because Scott's in a band, and the band's called Sex Bomb.
Yep. Yeah.
And the whole joke is like they have the band going on, then it's like you follow Scott's like what he's doing on the daily basis. There's like a point in the story where he defeats one of the evil exes who is a vegan, and he has psychic powers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because vegan.
I remember because the actor was he was one of the main guys. He was in Arrow, I think, and then later on in Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah. I'd have to look, because there's a bunch of like actors, and that's a great film.
He had like a mecha thing
that unfortunately nobody watched, but
the movie.
Yeah, it bombed.
Really?
Yeah.
I know tons of people who love it.
A lot of people do. It's a cult classic, but it didn't do well in the theaters.
I found that hard to believe. There must have been some other big blockbuster at the same time.
It was that, and it was just no one went to see it.
That's fair.
But There's when he defeats the third evil X, he gets a 1-up, like a literal extra life, and it comes into play later when he dies in the story.
Oh, you know what we didn't even think of for books? Huh? Ready Player One.
I was just thinking that one.
That was a good one. Did you
still haven't read that?
Have you seen the movie at least?
No.
No. I mean, the book's way better than the movie either way.
I've heard it's one of those things where it's like, I'll get to it at some point. I just haven't been interested in reading.
That's fair. I mean, Audible might be
that's
a
probably
good option for you. It's actually read by Will Wheaton, the first and second books.
Okay, I'll have to
which is interesting.
Shut up, Will.
But yes, your second pick.
So, well, to finish Scott Pilgrim though, it's pretty simple. It's only 6 volumes, and they.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a comic basically, so it goes by really fast.
Mm-hmm.
My second book, so I don't read a lot of books, but one I do have vivid memories of is the City of Ember series, which also had a movie adaptation, which also nobody saw.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
It's like a post-apocalyptic kind of storyline.
Okay.
Where it's about the world it's actually a little sketchy reading it now because it's actually there's a lot of parallels to the world right now in it. Mm-hmm. But it's a world that like got wiped out by nukes. So they sent all the you find it in the third book, which is a prequel to the series. But the whole story is the world was like kind of decimated by nuclear war, and they sent all the elderly down with babies to a city underground, the City of Ember. And the whole reason they sent the elderly was so that when they would pass away, the people who knew about the upper world would die with it, and all the young the children wouldn't remember.
So it's like the village.
But it was only the city was only designed to like last a set amount of time. And the instructions on how to get back to the surface were in a desk in the mayor's office, but the mayor actually ended up dying, and the thing got lost, and it got lost for another like couple of years, like I think it was kind of like another couple decades, which was significantly beyond the city's actual like planned like lifespan.
Yeah.
So by the time the series is going on, it's falling apart. Like the whole place is like going to shit.
Okay.
But the first one kind of chronicles how the two main characters. I'm not going to brain for what their names are, but it's basically about how they get back to the surface.
Okay.
And then the second one is basically about once they get up there and they encounter the new world where it is actually inhabited by people. The third book is a prequel that tells the story of why they went to Ember, and then the fourth book actually is about the main character going back to Ember.
Huh.
It's a really cool series.
What's it called?
The City of Ember.
City of Ember. I'm down with my list I've been writing.
The first book's City of Ember. The second one is The People of Sparks. The third is The Prophecy of Yonwood, and then the fourth is the Diamond of Darklore, I think.
Okay.
It's only 4 books, but they're really good. It's eerily creepy just how many parallels to like the world now is going on. I read those because we actually read The City of Ember back. That was one of the few books we read in school that I got attached to, and it did have a movie adaptation which was really good, but it bombed, so they never did sequels.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the same thing that happened in the Inkart movie, actually.
Yeah.
Because
the movie was not. I mean, I'd watch it again. I definitely like.
I mean, it was a fun movie for the most part, but
yeah,
like, it doesn't do it justice.
Not at all.
And honestly, if I'm being as much as I love the first one, I had so much fun with the second and third books because it does get a little bit darker, like as it goes on.
I still don't think I've read the third one. I know I've read the second one. I still don't think I've read the third one.
So for my third book, I'm actually going to change it because something popped in my head that I actually have more attachment to. Because I've read 2001, but I don't have the vivid like memory of it because I have more of a memory of the movie. Mm-hmm. But another one is The Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm. Oh, fuck yeah.
I read that back.
Good choice.
Absolutely.
Lion Witch and the Wardrobe.
So you like Chester. Because Chester was never a big reader, and but he loved the Narnia books.
So that's
I had like the epic like collector's edition volume that had all the books in one.
I got one of those too. It's the one with like Aslan's face on the front of it. Yeah,
I gotta find it because I don't know what happened to it.
Mine's just a paperback, but I mean,
mine was too.
That was actually how I read all because I had read the first 2 like years ago.
Oh,
I
and
actually still have them,
we probably should say because like it sounds confusing, but referencing Chester a few times, it's my first son's father who was a friend of ours. I feel like that sounds weird, just being like Chester this and Chester that without people knowing who he is.
I don't know. I mentioned Matt too, which might be confusing because my name is Matt.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's Pineapple
I've
Matt.
mentioned
Yeah, Pineapple Matt.
I've mentioned
But
that.
I mean, he doesn't even want he doesn't even want Frankie to be calling him that, so maybe we shouldn't call him that on the internet.
Totally calling him Pineapple Matt. It's his name now.
All right, and I've mentioned Alex a few times. That's my sister and co-host for my podcast.
Yeah.
Pineapple Matt.
So yeah, you were saying about Narnia.
Oh, it's just it's a classic story. Like the whole I'm most familiar with the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
I mean, that's the
Because
the go-to one. That's what everybody knows.
Well,
you know?
I got into that because it was right around when the big like theater movie,
2005 movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was coming out, so we were reading it in school. Like we read that. Like we all had to take turns reading it. The whole story. I mean, hell, I've seen the 2000. I saw the I don't. It wasn't 2000, but the earlier like made for TV version too.
Oh, the old BBC one.
Yeah, the goofy one that's like.
We used to rent that from Blockbuster.
See, I love that movie because like when the stone table breaks, it literally just goes boop.
No, dude.
No one could
I've been
see it.
trying to find that version because I want Cindy to watch it so bad.
It's so cringy.
It is, but I love it.
Like
We
when
can
they
probably
when,
find it now with all the streaming everything.
I don't know.
that's out
BBC
there.
keeps their shit pretty tight
probably on
sometimes.
YouTube.
Depending.
Probably no, it's hidden on
It
YouTube
might be
somewhere.
I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out.
You can
some
probably
point.
find bootlegs.
I always remember the lead up to that though, like the whole like we were reading and it's a cool story. Like they go through the wardrobe and they're all of a sudden in this Narnia land and it's like frozen because the Ice Queen froze it.
Yeah.
And the first it was the daughter, like the sister went in first, the younger sister. Right?
Yeah, the youngest.
And she ran into the. See, I'm terrible with remembering
The
names.
fawn, Mr. Tumnus.
Yes, him.
I remember that because a buddy of mine, Jason, in high school, one of our mutual friends started calling him Mr. Thomas because he got the name wrong, but he called him that because he had wicked hairy legs.
also-
so he started.
Who is Mr. Thomas?
Oh, James McAvoy,
Isn't that
who is
fun?
like one of the best actors of all time.
Going back
in
and
my
realizing
opinion.
that he's amazing. But going back and realizing that was him, it was like, what?
That's my favorite.
That was
part,
like one of
watching-
his
watching the
breakout
two
roles.
films because like the first one is it's like this goofy dude and then the second one is he's like this badass guy.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
But I always remember that, and then the second is the brother goes in and he runs into the Ice Queen,
Yeah.
and it starts the whole split where one goes off the other way. I always remember that because there's the one point where he finds like the solidified turned to stone lion, and he thinks that's it's Aslan, right?
Yeah, Aslan.
Aslan.
Yeah.
And he just draws a mustache on it because he's like, he's already been frozen.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's nothing. It's just some random lion.
It's mad funny.
I always remember too, like the parts where like once the world starts unfreezing and like they have to like cross the river, and it's like the movie makes it sound way more epic than the book did.
Oh well, the movie did that a lot of stuff
Yeah.
like that because the book is short. Like
It
you
is.
can read that
It's
book in an
surprisingly
afternoon.
short.
yeah, I read them in nights.
Yeah,
like,
you could
at
read
bedtime.
one Narnia book in an afternoon
Yeah.
easily. They're you know.
Well, yeah, because I remember they fit all 5 books into that one novel that's about the size of like a manga, like a viz big.
Yeah.
So
So is Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe your favorite one?
that's the one I have the most nostalgia with. Like the Prince of Caspian is pretty good too.
Prince of Caspian.
Oh, that's funny.
Prince
That's
Caspian was
actually one
pretty
of
good.
Chester's favorites. Is Prince
Is
of
it?
Caspian, yeah.
Did
That
you?
one's-
I never saw the movie. Was it good? Have you seen
It's
it?
okay. It's not as because it came out so far after like the hype for the original one ended
Yeah,
that like no one really gave a shit. I feel like.
that's fair.
I would love to reread those now that we're talking
Yeah,
about it.
I'd have to.
We got them all.
I need to
Yeah.
find my.
I
book
honestly,
somewhere.
for the first one I read, because I saw the movie, like I said, like we rented the old one and I saw the newer one later. But the first one I read, and the one that I think is probably, if not my favorite, it's tied for my favorite, is Magician's Nephew.
That one's good too.
I love that one. That one's really good.
Which one was the prequel again? Is that?
That was Magician's Nephew. That was the professor from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a
Yes.
kid,
Yeah.
and then he shows up again in the very last book. But yeah, I loved that one. That one was great.
That was the first one, right? Not in publication, but
In order of when it
Like,
takes place.
remember I
That's
had
the first
the
one.
box set.
Yeah.
That was the first
Yeah,
one.
because the,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
combined book I had actually puts that first.
And he's crawling
Yeah,
through
mine
the
too, yeah.
ceiling.
Yeah, he crawls through
Yes.
the. He goes. They're
That was
crawling
one of
through the
my
rafters.
favorites because of that build
Yeah.
up of like the mystery there. Like that was, I think I like the mystery of things. Like
Yeah.
because that was one of my favorites.
Actually,
for
when we were talking about doing our own D&D thing, and like one of the ideas that I had was like kind of doing like a big mixed universe thing where you could just kind of jump into pre-existing fictional worlds, so I wouldn't have to work as hard.
Yeah, that's
but my
awesome.
idea was somehow finding their way into like the way they would jump into other worlds in The Magician's Nephew, where they'd go into like this different plane and there's all these pools. If you jump into the pool, you go
Yeah.
into another world.
See that?
That was the idea I had.
I was just gonna say that.
Oh, there
it's
it goes.
fine. It's fine. How did it get over there? But thank you very much, sir. Pools, yes, pools. So you reminded me of one of my other favorites, and it's like a preteen novel. Like, I cannot remember what the fuck it's called, but it's got like necromancy in it. There's bells and all that, and it's like always. It's like the Eye of the Dragon. Like, it's a story that's in my mind. I know it, but I can't remember.
That's happened to me a bunch of times. Like, I actually did recently find out what they were called, but there were these books that I read when I was a kid about these kids who find like this machine in their attic, and it's basically like a way that you can kind of time travel, but like through a picture. Like, if you have a picture of something, essentially, this you do. And I found out later that they were called the Disaster Series. It was the volcano disaster, the blizzard disaster, and like so on.
I wish I could remember the name of this book. Like, it drives me. Don't you hate that? Yeah. Like, when that happens and you know it in your mind, the story.
I have that with video games all the time.
You also have a much wider range of video games that you've played.
True. But there's actually a Reddit board called Tip of My Joystick, which is basically like you. The whole premise of it is you give a description of a game, and you basically just ask the board, does anybody know this? And then a lot of times people do, and that's how you figure it. There's probably one for books too. Now that I think about it,
probably.
And there was another one too where there was like, it had something to do with like a girl and her family, and they were all named like certain things that had to do with the compass, and there was like a compass rose, and she rode a bear. Compass? No, it's different than that, because I always thought that, but it's different. She had purple eyes. I remember that.
That sounds familiar, but I have no idea.
But I remember her having purple eyes, and that was like a big thing. I don't know, it just drives me nuts when I can't remember like good books.
Yeah. Well,
even if they are juvenile.
Yeah. So back to me, because I never said mine.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't expect mine to start a tangent like that. I thought mine was going to be like boom, boom, boom.
Well, that's kind of something that I'm planning to be like a thing that's okay with on this podcast. It's just kind of going sidetracked. Mm-hmm. Because we're just those kinds of people in general.
No, I wish we had pizza.
Cindy and I especially are very, we'll let a conversation go, even if we have a topic. And
we'll
circle around to it eventually.
It's the ADD in us, like it just.
Me and Alex do that all the time, where we'll just like get on some weird tangent and be like, anyways.
Yeah. But some of the best. I mean, before we even started recording, we were having like similar things going on, where we were just kind of talking and had this whole conversation going, and I feel like I kind of wish we had started recording earlier because there was some gold there. But no, we can't get pizza. We have the voila meal.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Bill.
It's not his turn, it's my turn.
Oh, sorry. I'm mad at you.
Alright, so my number one, which will always be my favorite book, because I've read it about 100 times, I've watched the movies 100 times, is The Hobbit.
Oh, yeah.
I know we've already talked a little bit about Lord of the Rings, but it goes beyond Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, honestly, because the entire world that he has constructed it's ridiculous. And that's part of why I like it so much, is because he put so much thought into it. In fact, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings were an afterthought for him. And that's one of those things that I like about it so much, is because his whole thing was he wanted to create a mythology. He wanted to create a compendium of stories, and that ended up becoming the Silmarillion. Which is really interesting, because the first time I read that, it reads much like the Bible, which is odd for that kind of story,
Yeah.
But anyways, The Hobbit has always been one of those stories for me that my uncle originally introduced it to me. He got me the audiobooks and my own paperback copy of it. And I've read that book so many times. It's just such a fun, lighthearted adventure. And, there's a lot of twists and turns along the way. And, I mean, honestly, you might even just like that one, The Hobbit, because it's less crazy and descriptive and
I'm
stuff.
not sure
than Lord of the Rings,
how similar it is, but I have played the PS2 game.
I actually never played that one.
Is that a joint?
I've heard it.
Yeah, it looks like a joint to me.
That was not supposed to be out loud.
It's a coloring book.
It was an inner conversation.
Yeah, but it's a stoner coloring book. So.
And I forgot the. Sorry, go ahead.
That's right. It's legal. So.
Yeah. What were we saying?
Well, I was just the
PS2 game.
The
yeah,
PS2.
Yeah.
From what
I never played it, so I have no idea.
I've played that. It's actually, from what people have said, it's pretty faithful, but.
Oh, fair enough. You know what really upset me. They made a Lego Hobbit video game, but it only covered the first 2 movies. And their original plan was to have the 3rd movie come out as DLC when the movie came out, but they never did it. So that game is forever incomplete, and that really annoys me.
Now, The Hobbit is a short book.
Yeah, it's
Did it really need to be 3 movies?
No, it didn't, and
Okay,
that's one of the biggest complaints
the
that it
complaint
has.
was it was too stretched out.
Honestly, and I was just watching this the other day with my kids. Was the animated movie from the 70s is really fun. I like that. I still have the same. I have the same VHS from when I was little, and I watched that so many friggin' times when I was a kid.
So if I go retro game hunting, and because The Hobbit's a pretty worthless game to be honest, price wise, if I see a super cheap copy, I'll grab it for you because
I'll try it out.
It's not bad. I actually, as someone who really has no like nostalgia or real interest in the Lord of the Rings and stuff, it's a pretty fun game.
Yeah.
It's like a little hack and slash like adventure game.
I
guess that
played
makes
the
sense.
Lego ones.
Lego Lord of the Rings is actually really fun. It's an open world Lego game, which is very
So it's
different.
like Lego City.
You legit walk from the Shire to Mordor.
I used to hate like Lego games, watching other people play them, but then
They're
when
fun
I
to
started,
play.
they're satisfying. Like,
Yeah.
Lego Star Wars was my jam back in
But
the
that
day.
was like what opened the door for Lego games in a big way.
That's why we haven't heard from Traveler's Tales in years.
Yeah.
They're making Lego games.
But yeah, just in general, like I love the way that the characters interact with each other in that, and especially Bilbo. I love Bilbo. Like he is the best Hobbit in my opinion.
It's one of those. It's like
He
one
might
of
be
those.
Type of Mary actually.
It's one of those series that's kind of like you grew up with it. It's like a huge part of like your thing, but it's not like something that everyone can get into. I guess.
I read it once a year at least,
Okay.
and I watch the movie multiple times.
Oh.
Me and Cindy, that's like one of our comfort movies is Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
We
yeah.
love it. But yeah, my second one is Where the Red Fern Grows, because that's another one that I've read since I was a child, and that's one of those books that stuck with me because I think that's the first book that I ever cried reading, because it's a very heartwarming story. It's a story about a boy and his dogs. Have you read it? No.
No.
Yeah, it's a story about a boy and his dogs. He gets a couple of coon hunting dogs, and he like goes and like does his whole thing with them, goes through his whole journey. And
Is there a movie adaptation? Of
Yeah.
I might have seen that.
Yeah.
Because it sounds familiar.
Fuck that. I never want to see that. I don't want to ever see that. Never.
Well, it's not as graphic as the book was.
I don't care. It's still sad.
Well, either way, I don't know. It's just one of those stories that it just stuck with me. I think it was one of the first books that I really like sat down and just could not put it down. But yeah, and then my third one is Tuesdays of Maury, which is a true story to anyone who doesn't know. And it's honestly the kind of book that I recommend everyone read once. I'm assuming you've read it. They didn't throw it to you at school.
Hopefully just once, because it's so sad.
I'll have to look.
Everyone should read it once. It's one of those stories. It's about life. It's
Chester
about like
Maury.
the it's about an old man named Maury, and this was a true story. You could actually find videos of like interviews and stuff with different and there's this old guy named Maury who was a professor, and he had what was the disease?
Was it
ALS?
ALS?
Lou Gehrig's
Was it?
disease.
Something. It was. I can't remember, but it was some sort of
It was like like one of those ones where you just lose all muscle.
deteriorating.
Yeah.
type.
Until eventually become an invalid and can't move. You
Yeah.
know.
I think that's ALS.
Yeah,
That was the ice bucket challenge thing, right?
I think so. I don't know. But anyways,
I never did it.
so he finds out that he's dying, and he does this interview on TV, and one of his old students happens to see it, who was the guy who wrote the book.
Oh, okay.
And he goes to visit him, and they end up meeting up every Tuesday and talking about life and the meaning of it all and his outlook on everything, just trying to pass things down to him and stuff. And it's a really heartwarming story.
I'll have to look into it.
It's heartbreaking story. Okay?
It's honestly, it's more heartbreaking if you listen to the audiobook because it's read by the author,
all set. Thank you.
the guy who actually like went to see Maury and like did all that.
Yeah.
So, and he's reading it, you can hear the emotion in his voice. And at the very end of the audiobook, he actually plays clips because they recorded their conversations on a
I
tape
don't want to
player.
hear that. So I mean, I do, but I don't because it's like. So
You
sad.
cry enough on a daily basis.
I do. I cry a lot.
See, I'm told multiple times I don't have a heart or soul. So,
You don't
Cindy's
have a
told
heart.
me that.
well, I have a hard time. Emotions aren't my strong point. So,
Yeah,
that's my issue. Emotions are
yeah.
everything.
Cindy's
to me.
told me similar things many times, and I think because a lot of times it's when we're watching like TV or something, and like something really sad happens. You're like, why are you crying?
You're a sociopath. Like the first time we met you, actually, Bill, I was like, he's a serial killer.
I've gotten that a lot.
And I did the same with
That's
that.
okay.
Like,
She still calls me a serial killer from time to time.
you know, it's always the person you least fucking expect. Like, I'm still waiting, and I'm annoying. I'm still waiting for you to kill me.
No, I always used to get like either like he's a psycho or can he talk?
There was one time we used to work at Cumberland Farms, me and Cindy, and there was this lady. I don't even remember what was it.
It was a drunk lady, really.
Yeah, you tell the
late
story.
night.
You remember it better than I do.
I don't know. It was a drunk lady, really late at night, and she comes in. She looks at me and my friend John, who are working, and Matt is standing right there in front of her, right in the middle of us, and she looks at us. She goes, "Does he even speak English?" And Matt, instead of saying yes, he just stands there and he's like, doesn't say anything. Me and John are cracking up, like knowing that he does. I don't know.
So that's when I would have been like, "No hablo español," or something like that.
I should have.
But Matt was so funny. He just standing there like.
It's just like, who says that? Doing
like, that face.
They didn't even try to
like,
talk to me.
So funny.
That's all right.
Well, I always got the because even like before I got to an age and started smoking weed and stuff, like when I was like young, people would ask me if I smoked weed because I have like the I don't know if I have my eyes a lot.
Yeah, when his eyes are like really open, it freaks me out. I'm like, what's wrong? Are you mad?
Yeah, right.
No, well, actually, one of my favorites was senior year of high school. My English teacher, she for some I've never had a teacher do this before, but her end of the year, she gave every student in our class her like opinion, like what she thought of them, like over the course of the year.
Weird.
Yeah, it was interesting, but hers, she literally paused.
Well, like an employee.
Yeah, kind of like
report kind of thing.
Yeah, like she's most of them were really nice and heartfelt, but mine was her thought. Her little.
I'm still not sure about you.
Her little thing was, it's like every day you had a different personality, and I was like, that's great. To be fair though, I was a fucking like. I did kind of like sketch her out a few times.
I had some very mixed relationships with a lot of my teachers.
Oh, I had terrible relationships with. I'm not afraid to say it. I hated school.
Well, I mean, I had fun in school, depending on what was going on.
But I had like no friends, so.
I had a lot of school friends that I could pal around with at school. Honestly, I barely talk to anybody that I was friends with in school anymore. Even one of my best friends, like. And he'll always be my best friend, or like among my best friends for sure. And I haven't even talked to him in about a year and a half, but I mean, we still like whenever we meet up, it's like nothing changed.
See, all my school friends, like I don't talk to anymore. Like I don't even refer to them as friends.
That's fair.
But no, because I met most of my actual friends after high school, like after graduation, because that's when you actually like grow up and you're like you understand who a real person is.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the group of friends that I've been hanging out with since like. Literally since just a few months after I graduated, pretty much. Later on in the year after I graduated was when I met like the group of friends that I hung out with consistently ever since.
Oh, yeah.
Not so much now because we're all pairing up and having kids and all that other stuff.
So was that nice having friends? I don't know what that's like. I'm just kidding. I had friends, but they all ended up like drug addicts and shit. So
yeah,
it's just been me for a while.
Well, I mean,
I have Chester.
Yeah, you have Chester, and me.
Yay.
Oh well.
So we were talking about books.
Yeah, I was
we
gonna
were.
say we're going into life like.
Well, I mean, we all said our top three. Are there any other specific books we want to discuss?
I'm trying to think. I remember because I'm trying to think of some of the books I did read back in like school.
You know what I think? You would probably like the SAO books or the Bakano books. At some point, because I know you and I talked about doing like review stuff. Mm-hmm. I think we should watch Bakano. It's only 16 episodes. We will have to take specific notes on that one though, because I mean we watched that at one point. It's confusing the first time you watch it.
Oh yeah, I'd have to watch it another time actually.
It's 3 different storylines that take place in 3 different years, but you're getting bits of each storyline in every episode. And there are 2 characters in particular who are in all 3 stories. Mm-hmm. And there are some other crossover characters too, but for the most part, like, it's just confusing trying to figure out, like, wait, which story is this? Like, which part am I watching? Like,
I know you don't smoke pot, but anybody that does, probably not a good time if you're trying to watch this show.
Yeah.
I have to watch it again because I do not.
Like, the structure of that review is going to be different than
you
most
have
others.
to follow it.
That one is that's like an actual like note taker one.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
For sure. But it's a good story. It's really, and especially if you're reading the books,
I have a book.
because the books go way further than the show does, and it gets really interesting. What is your book?
Again, it's another like. Sorry, I'm like eating so.
At least it's healthy.
I know this time. Anyways, it's another like younger like teenage type novel, but it's a fucking story that we could all relate to the fear of because, you know, all the conspiracies of like being tracked with your phone and, you know, the government always having tabs on every person. You can't go off grid anymore. It's called The Barcode Tattoo, and that book, like, I recommend it because it's just infringing of government, not to bring politics or anything into it, but the fear of our government infringing upon our rights. That book,
that
like,
is a pretty real fear.
it's like there's a girl that you have to get a barcode tattoo. Her dad kills herself because of it, because they know everything. As soon as you get it, they know your blood type, who you've had sex with, what books you've read, like every fucking thing about you and your life and your medical and everything. And you're always tracked. You can never leave. And she grows up watching her mom going fucking crazy, like scrubbing her arm till it's bleeding and shit. So she's young enough, I think it's like 17 you're supposed to get the tattoo. And she's young enough to like, it's like I either get this or I fucking run and get off grid before, but they'll come and get you. So she finds a group of people and she goes and runs away. And, you know, as the story goes on, I don't want to give the rest of it away, but like, she tries to get away from it. And it is, as far as I remember, it was a really good story. I mean, I feel like it started to get a little more into like the teen drama of it, but that part of it, like
that just
fear
that
is
whole
like
concept is like a very real thing.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
why it's like I wish that they would make more of that story, like, because it would be really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, well,
I think. I mean, other than that, like, I'm trying to think of some of like the stupid books we read in school. I'm trying to remember.
I liked a lot of the books that they gave us in school.
See,
I mean, you didn't go to a public school though. So.
Well, I did for like middle school and stuff.
Yeah, but like the years that you would probably remember reading stuff more, you went to a trade school.
Yeah.
So they kind of less of a focus on that kind of thing.
See, I loved history. History was great.
I was never particularly good with history. There's certain specific parts of history, yeah, but what?
I know it's kind of like there's been controversy over this in the past, but I won't get into that. But another one is A Million Little Pieces, and it's James Frey writes it. And I know, like I said, there's controversy if you look into it, but if you just read the book, especially as an addict or recovering, which hi, I'm Cindy and I'm an addict. The truth in your head, what you experience while you are living his lifestyle, the way he writes, it really penetrates it. You really understand, and I don't know. That's another one that I would definitely recommend for people who ever have loved ones who are addicts or who have experienced it. It's a deep story and it's good.
Cool.
I like all different genres.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably talk more about specific books a lot on later episodes.
Yeah,
But,
this one I could do a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, preaching the choir here.
I know.
We haven't even got to the video games yet.
No,
I forgot about
that's
them.
next up. So we'll cut this one off now.
I sound like a fat ass. Thank God they can't see me.